The rain poured down in thick sheets, drumming against the metal walls of the small outpost on the edge of the planet Viridia. Ethan stood by the reinforced window, watching the storm rage across the barren landscape. The wind tore at the metal structures, and lightning split the dark sky, illuminating the jagged mountains that surrounded the colony. He pulled his jacket tighter around his shoulders, feeling a chill despite the heat of the emergency lamps inside. He had been alone all day, repairing the communication arrays damaged in the last storm. The storms here were unpredictable, violent, and dangerous, but Ethan had learned to survive. He was skilled, careful, and stubborn. That stubbornness had saved his life more times than he could count. Then he saw her. At first, he thought it was just a shadow, a trick of the lightning, but the figure moved. It was a woman, drenched in rain, staggering through the mud. Her clothes clung to her frame, torn and soaked, and her hair plastered her face. She looked fragile in the torrent, but there was something in her posture, a tension, a strength, that made Ethan freeze for a moment. He had never seen anyone like her before. Not in his colony, not in any of the data from other planets. Her skin had a strange faint glow, almost like bioluminescence, shifting slightly under the rain. Her eyes, when she lifted her head toward him, reflected the lightning like twin mirrors. Ethan acted without thinking. He grabbed his raincoat and ran out into the storm, the mud sucking at his boots. The wind nearly knocked him off balance, but he pushed forward. When he reached her, she slumped forward, and he caught her just in time. She was heavier than she looked, her body tense with exhaustion, but she did not struggle. Her breathing was ragged, and he could see the faint shimmer of energy around her, a glow that seemed almost alive. "Hey, you're going to be okay." "I'll get you inside," Ethan shouted over the roar of the storm. She said nothing. She didn't speak at all, only tilted her head toward him, eyes wide and alert. That was when he realized she did not understand his words. Her mouth moved as if forming sounds, but nothing came out. Ethan carried her back to the shelter, struggling against the wind. Inside, he laid her gently on a cot and began removing the soaked outer layers of her clothing. She flinched slightly at his touch, but did not resist. Her skin felt cool under his hands, and he noticed tiny ridges and markings that no human had. Her hands were delicate but strong, fingers slightly elongated, with small patterns that seemed to move when touched. "I'm Ethan," he said softly. "You're safe here. Just rest." She looked at him, and for a moment, her glowing eyes softened. Though she still said nothing, the storm continued outside, shaking the building. Ethan worked quickly, lighting the emergency heater and wrapping her in a dry blanket. She shivered violently, teeth chattering. And he realized that despite her alien physiology, she could not survive long in this storm without shelter. He offered her water, and she drank slowly, eyes never leaving his face. There was a curiosity in her gaze, as if she was trying to understand him. Ethan studied her closely. She was unlike any known alien species in the galactic registry. Her features were humanoid, but different, slightly taller, more agile, her senses clearly heightened. She moved with a cautious grace, even in exhaustion. And he suspected she was a warrior, or at least trained to survive harsh conditions. "Where are you from?" he asked, realizing she wouldn't understand. Instead, he pointed to himself, then to her, hoping she would get the idea. She tilted her head, studying him, then pointed to the outside, to the storm. Then, in a sudden motion, she pulled a small device from her beltosphere, no bigger than a fist stand, tapped it. A holographic map sprang to life, showing unknown star systems, planets, and coordinates. One of the points flickered rapidly as if signaling something urgent. Ethan's heart skipped. This was advanced technology, far beyond anything his colony had. He did not know if she was friend or foe, but something in her behavior suggested desperation, not malice. She looked at him, then back at the device, and finally, with a nod, she handed it to him. Her eyes glimmered with an unspoken plea. The shelter alarm suddenly blared. Motion sensors outside detected movement. Ethan grabbed his toolkit and rushed to the reinforced window. Through the rain, he could see shadows moving among the rocky terrain. Predators, native to Viridia, massive and aggressive, drawn out by the storm, were approaching. They had been hunting in packs, and this storm was an opportunity for them to strike. He turned to her. "I need your help," he said, though he doubted she understood. She only stared, eyes narrowing. Then suddenly, with an almost inhuman speed, she moved to the wall panel, placing her hands on it. A low hum filled the room, and energy rippled across the metal surface. The devices in the shelter sparked but stabilized, forming a protective barrier that deflected the first wave of attacks outside. Ethan's jaw dropped. She wasn't just intelligent, she was powerful. The creatures outside snarled and banged against the reinforced walls, but the barrier held. He realized then that they were going to survive, not because of him alone, but because of her. The storm raged for hours. Ethan and the woman, now lying side by side on the cot, worked in silence. She observed everything he did, fixing circuits, monitoring energy levels, reinforcing walls, absorbing human methods as if learning a new language. He noticed small gestures, subtle mimicry of his movements, a clear intelligence that went beyond instinct. When the storm finally began to subside, Ethan slumped into a chair, exhausted. The woman remained by his side, watching him carefully. For the first time, she made a sound, a soft note, almost musical. It was not words, but it was the first sign of communication. Ethan smiled faintly, tired but relieved. "You saved me," he whispered. "Now I think I saved you too." Her glowing eyes met his, and though she could not speak, Ethan felt a connection, a bond forming in the silence. It was unusual, unexplainable, but undeniable. She had trusted him, and he had trusted her. And that mutual trust had kept them alive. By dawn, the rain had stopped, leaving a mist over the jagged mountains. Ethan went outside to assess the damage to the colony. When he returned, she was standing, unsteady but determined. She did not leave. Instead, she followed him, curious, cautious, but persistent. She had nowhere else to go, or perhaps she had chosen to stay. The rest of the colony was wary. Scientists and engineers stared at her with suspicion, whispers of danger and protocol filling the air. But she did not harm anyone. When a minor accident with the colony's energy supply occurred, she intervened, stabilizing the system in ways that humans could not comprehend. The colony began to see that she was not a threat, but an asset. Ethan and the woman, whose name he still did not know, began spending more time together. She observed, learned, and occasionally mimicked his actions. At night, they would sit together, the alien woman silent but present, her gaze following every movement, every sound. Ethan felt a strange comfort in her presence, a sense that they were no longer alone in the harsh, storm-torn world. As the sun rose over the misty mountains, Ethan realized something profound. Survival here was no longer just about engineering skill or human resilience. It was about trust, adaptation, and the bond between two very different beings. The storm had brought them together, and now, nothing could icily separate them. And for the first time in months, Ethan smiled without worry. He was no longer alone in the storm. She was here by his side, soaking wet, strange, and undeniably alive. And she was not going anywhere. The morning air was heavy with mist, and the remains of the storm left puddles that reflected the pale light of Viridia's twin suns. Ethan stepped outside the shelter, his boots sinking slightly into the muddy ground, while the alien woman followed quietly behind him. She moved with a strange grace, as if the mud and wet surfaces did not exist, her glowing eyes scanning everything around her. Ethan had begun calling her Lyra after the faint melody she had produced during the storm. It was not a name she had given herself, but it was easier than trying to communicate in complicated gestures. The colony was slowly recovering. Damaged walls were being repaired, and the energy systems were being recalibrated. The other scientists and engineers still regarded Lyra with caution, though some had begun to watch her with curiosity rather than fear. When a sudden power fluctuation caused sparks to fly from a generator, she moved instantly, placing her hands near the energy flow. A calm wave of energy extended from her palms, stabilizing the generator. The engineers stepped back in awe. She had not only saved the system, but done so without touching a single control panel or tool, Ethan observed from a distance, a sense of pride mixed with amazement rising inside him. He had always known humans were resourceful, capable of adapting to almost any situation. But seeing Lyra adapt and react so quickly to human technology made him realize that the galaxy was far bigger and stranger than he had imagined. The day passed with work and cautious exploration. Ethan and Lyra moved together, checking structural damage, fixing broken antennas, and patching leaks. Every action she observed, every solution he applied, she seemed to understand instinctively. Ethan began explaining things aloud, not expecting her to understand words, but knowing she was listening. Sometimes she mimicked his movements. He would see a flash of understanding in her glowing eyes as evening fell. The skies darkened again, and a faint red glow appeared on the horizon. The storm had returned, though smaller than before. Ethan could feel tension building in the colony. They were not fully prepared for another assault, not after the first storm had left so much damage. He turned to Lyra, who was already moving toward the observation platform, scanning the horizon. Her posture was alert, body tense, as if she could sense the danger before it even arrived. "They're coming," he whispered, though the creatures had not yet appeared. He did not need to explain. Lyra understood. She had already predicted their approach. When the first shadowy forms emerged from the mist, Ethan braced himself. These were the same predators from the previous storm, massive armored beasts with claws that could tear through metal. But this time, Ethan did not feel fear. He had Lyra by his side. The attack was sudden. The creatures crashed into the outer walls, their weight shaking the structure. Ethan grabbed a nearby tool and prepared to defend the colony, but Lyra acted first. She stepped into the open, her hands glowing faintly, and a wave of energy pulsed outward. The beasts howled in confusion, staggering back, their claws sliding uselessly across the invisible barrier that extended from her body. Ethan ran alongside her, reinforcing the barrier with makeshift energy conductors, their combined effort holding the creatures at bay. For hours the battle continued. Ethan marveled at Lyra's instincts, her ability to predict every move, every strike. He realized that no human could have done this alone. And yet, there was something deeply human about the way she reacted to him, protective, almost empathetic. Every time a creature breached the edge of the barrier, she reacted as if it were a threat to both of them, not just the colony. Finally, the beasts retreated, disappearing into the mist in the distant mountains. Ethan sank to his knees, exhausted, mud and sweat covering him. Lyra approached, placing a hand on his shoulder. The touch was light, but grounding. She looked at him with a soft intensity, her glowing eyes showing relief, almost like a smile. Ethan felt an unexpected warmth spread through him. It was not just relief from survival, but something deeper: connection, understanding, and trust. The colony erupted in cautious celebration. Survivors cheered. Engineers and scientists praised Ethan for his leadership. But he knew the truth. It was Lyra who had saved them all. Without her, the colony would have fallen. Even as the others argued about protocols and containment, Ethan approached Lyra. She was quiet, watching the people around her with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. "You saved everyone," he said softly. "We owe you more than I can say." She tilted her head, and for a moment her glowing eyes flickered in a pattern that Ethan interpreted as acknowledgement. He wondered what she was thinking, what her mind held. She had been silent since the first storm, yet she communicated more in a glance than most humans could with words. Over the following days, Ethan and Lyra became inseparable. She refused to leave his side, following him during inspections, helping repair structures, and silently learning everything about human life in the colony. The other colonists were slowly adjusting, realizing that her loyalty was undeniable. She never acted against them, never showed aggression unless defending the colony, and her actions often prevented accidents before they could happen. Ethan found himself teaching her small things: how to operate certain tools, how to adjust the energy conduits, even basic communication using hand signals and gestures. Lyra learned quickly, faster than any human student he had ever trained. There were moments of levity. Tushy would mimic his habits in small, almost humorous ways, like brushing dirt from her shoulder after he did, or tilting her head in confusion when he muttered to himself. Those moments made him laugh, the sound echoing strangely in the stillness of the colony. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the mud and rocks, Ethan noticed that Lyra had paused near the edge of the observation platform. She stared at the horizon, her hands lifted slightly, as if feeling the air itself. He walked over, standing beside her, and for the first time, she placed her hand over his. The warmth from her skin was strange, almost electric, but comforting. She did not speak, yet he understood. She was choosing to stay, choosing to remain by his side. The thought settled in Ethan's mind like a gentle tide. He realized that their bond was no longer just about survival. It had become something deeper, a partnership. He did not know why she had come to this planet or why she had chosen him, but he felt the same pull. The colony continued to thrive, repairing the damage from the storms and fortifying defenses with both human ingenuity and Lyra's alien abilities. Ethan noticed subtle changes in the people around them. The colonists began to admire human resilience, recognizing how resourceful and determined humans could be. Lyra's presence had amplified those qualities, showing them that humans were capable of facing challenges beyond what anyone had imagined. One night, Ethan and Lyra were alone, sitting near the shelter's observation window. The stars shone brightly, scattered across the sky in patterns he had never seen before. Lyra's glowing eyes reflected the distant constellations, and for a moment, she reached out, touching one of the holographic maps Ethan had prepared. A faint shimmer of light connected the stars to her fingertips. "You understand?" he said softly, even though he knew she could not understand his words fully. "You understand what it means to survive, to fight, to protect." She nodded slightly, her gaze never leaving his. In that silent acknowledgement, Ethan felt a truth he could not explain. Humans were not alone in the galaxy, and their potential was limitless when combined with allies who could see the world in new ways. The next morning, the colony received a transmission from a distant scout ship. A new threat was approaching, one that no human colony had faced before. Ethan looked at Lyra, who was already standing, alert and ready. Together, they prepared for the unknown, their bond unspoken but undeniable. They were stronger together, humans and alien united, facing the challenges of a galaxy that was vast, dangerous, and full of wonders. And so, as the suns rose over Viridia once more, Ethan realized something he had never thought about before. Survival was not just about skill, courage, or technology. It was about connection, trust, and the willingness to face the universe with someone by your side who believed in you. No matter how strange or different they might be. Lyra looked at him again, her eyes glowing softly, and for the first time, Ethan felt that perhaps they had both found something rare. Not just survival, but understanding, partnership, and a promise of what humanity could achieve when it reached beyond itself. Together, they stepped into the new day, ready for whatever the galaxy had in store, and ready to show that humans, even on a distant, storm-torn world, could inspire hope, courage, and change. Lyra did not leave his side, and Ethan did not want her to. They had survived the storm together, and now nothing could easily separate them.